SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Bank First is a locally owned bank that makes decisions right here at home. Local decisions, local support, and local folks who care if your kid made the team. Stop by your local Bank First branch to learn more. Bank First. Neighbors, bankers, friends. Bank First is a member FDIC and equal housing lender. Bank NMLS 454063.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Who turned the air conditioner on there, Rhino? Dang.
Oh, it feels good.
Jeez, it's cold out there, and it's going to get colder tonight, right? So I had a couple of people sending me video, photos of sleet, snow falling in the Magnolia State. What the heck? Gee whiz. My son is flying to Vegas for business. Left very early this morning out of the Jackson International Airport. And when he landed in Houston, connecting in Houston at Hobby over there, he said that's the wildest one he's been on. It was quite windy. I'm sure it was buffeting the aircraft around en route, headed out to Vegas. Speaking of travel, not a big problem out of here. Major delays across these United States at the airports. The FAA shut a couple of airports down due to severe weather. And then a few hours ago, it was announced that some 300 TSA agents says, we're out of here. They say that they're not getting paid, as you know. That's because of the old failure of the Congress to fund Homeland Security, and that includes TSA. And so as a result, they basically are saying, this is it. Well, flights frozen because of weather. The combination of that would be, by the way, in Atlanta and also in Charlotte. Grounded to a halt. Had ground delays at George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston. That, according to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. Delays nationwide 9,500 as a result of the storms which swept through our state overnight and are plowing eastward and heading through the mid-Atlantic states and wreaking havoc there. So you got kind of a toxic combination, Rhino, of the TSA being at less than full capacity and storms and systems problems in Houston with the ground control. Not a good day to be traveling. I'm hoping and praying for my son that he is able to get out. He's on a 4-hour layover there in Houston as he goes to Las Vegas. And everybody traveling, just be aware that 300 TSA agents called it quits. And you know, the thing about it is, if and when they do actually sign off on some legislation to fund that agency, I'm not sure they'll get these people back. Now, sure, they can go hire new people, but that's not an easy task. That doesn't happen rapidly. got to go through all the various training and so forth. So this is a big problem, and it's all because Democrats don't like the way ICE operates. In fact, if they had their druthers, they would completely defund ICE. They can't see the reason we even have the organization. And it seems like every day something else happens, does it not? Where you scratch your head and you look at the problems caused by Joe Biden's wide open borders. And, of course, the Democrats were in tow with him on that policy as well. They just essentially don't think we ought to have any borders and should welcome all comers regardless of background, regardless of intent or risk to this country, all the above. And I think just flying the doors open, letting all these people in, has caused a myriad of problems. And this is one of them. So the major headache being imposed on the traveling public in this country, traveling via air, is a direct result of their refusal to fund the ICE agency. It's insane. It truly is. And, of course, we got this big squabble going up there on the Hill on the SAVE Act. Very simple, straightforward legislation that just says, hey, you got to be an American citizen to vote. And you know what the latest they've said, Rhino, is? We'd be okay if a driver's license presented at the precinct were sufficient to vote. Except there are like 14 states that issue driver's licenses to illegals. So a driver's license clearly does not prove one is a legal citizen. Oh, thanks, Democrats. That's what they're saying. And they believe that any other authentication would disenfranchise voters. Meaning, when you register to vote, you got to prove through your birth certificate. If your name's changed due to marriage, bring your marriage certificate. It's not that big a deal. It's really not. That's all we're asking for. Just make sure. Now, I got to tell you, I'm not convinced. I know a lot of people are. I'm not totally convinced that the rolls are just filled with illegals that are out there voting. I don't know how big a challenge that is to our elections integrity as what I think is by far the biggest problem, and that's this mass mail-out of ballots. We don't do that here. Some states do. One of those states, surprisingly, a red state, Utah. They send a ballot to everybody that's on the voter rolls. Now, that wouldn't be a problem if, A, the voter rolls were clean. And I don't mean just clean in that they don't have illegals on it. I mean clean in that you don't have people that are registered in other states, because that is a big problem. Because the state systems, unfortunately, all of them do not integrate and communicate and talk to each other's systems to make sure that a voter is not registered in multiple states. Same problem we have with the Medicaid program. You got the same person enrolled in multiple states. They're only getting reimbursed in one, only receiving the benefit in one, but the states pay a third-party provider to manage Medicaid, and it's based on the people enrolled. So if a person's enrolled in multiple states are paying the Medicaid Managed Services Organization that runs the Medicaid program. It's a huge waste of money. But all we want is to make sure that people are valid citizens. Now, we have a piece of legislation here that looks like in the state of Mississippi, it kind of mirrors the SAVE Act to some extent. Looks like it might get across the finish line. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rhino, it's called the SHIELD Act. And that has similar requirements in it, in that it would require registrars in the counties of Mississippi to ensure that whomever applies to vote is a citizen. And it would also require the Secretary of State to check the voter rolls at least once a year against the SAVE database operated by the federal government, not to be confused with the SAVE Act. It's a database that essentially maintains citizenship status. And so it would require that the Secretary of State bump those names against the federal database to make sure. And if they are removed, if they are determined to not be citizens, the Secretary of State must remove them from the rolls and then must report to the legislature on an annual basis, provide a report showing, A, those who applied to vote but were rejected because they're not citizens, and also those who are on the rolls who were removed because in checking the SAVE database, it was determined they don't have legal citizenship status. That report would have to be prepared by the Secretary of State and delivered to the legislature. It's just common sense legislation. We're in the Element Wealth studio, just getting started. Senator Brice Wiggins at 11:05. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Middays with me will be at the Westin in downtown Jackson on Wednesday. I'll be there for the Madison County Business League and Foundation, along with Pracon Global Investment Group's annual luncheon with keynote speaker Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Going to be down there at the Westin. Looking forward to that remote. Maybe it'll warm up a little bit between now and then. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. Shout out, by the way, to the fine folks at the Pontotoc County Republican Women. Was invited to speak to the group yesterday, preceded by State Senator Kathy Chisholm. Really enjoyed being with the Republican women in the group. Was able to meet the mayor as well. And the fire chief attended. That was fun. Good folks. Pontotoc, neat town, by the way. In so many small towns in Mississippi that really make our state great, I believe. One of the key assets that we feature are just these great small communities like that. That's one of them, for sure. And it also appears to be thriving, I would say, Rhino. When you ride through town, you see that the main street there, all the shops and buildings and stores and locations are occupied. They have a great school system, by the way, great health care, all the ingredients, little to no crime, to making a community a very attractive one to live, to work, to worship, to educate your children and raise a family. That's what it's all about. So appreciate that. Appreciate them having me, and looking forward to more similar debates. So, not debates. Somebody sent me something on debate. More similar engagements. The SHIELD Act in the state of Mississippi, I was talking about that earlier. And this is one that's it's entitled SHIELD. That's the acronym: Safeguard Honesty, Integrity in Elections for Lasting Democracy. Boy, they had to think about that one, didn't they? So, in the key provisions are, again, that when one registers to vote, they must enter all new voter applications into the systematic alien verification for entitlements. That's the federal SAVE system. So the process is simple. Right now, as you know, Rhino, you just fill out the application and you check a box that says I'm a citizen, right? And that is, if you lie, that is an act that would be punishable by our law, pretty severe punishment for falsifying that document. But we don't really do any strict verification currently. It's just an affidavit that you sign. This would require the registrar to check the immigration, the citizenship status. I said immigration, really the citizenship status of the individual applying. And if the SAVE system does not immediately return, hey, look, this person is a citizen, then they must provide proof. Birth certificate, passport, are examples of acceptable documents. And I think it's fairly limited, of course, because that's what's required to prove you're a citizen. And then on an annual basis, the Secretary of State, again, would compare the statewide voter system maintained by the SOS with that federal SAVE database, and anybody not checking out in the SAVE database as a citizen is removed. That doesn't mean they can't vote if they are come back in and prove they are a citizen. It's just for safekeeping in an effort to ensure that the rolls only contain U.S. citizens. If you don't show up in that federal SAVE database marked as a citizen, you are removed. Simply provide proof of citizenship, and they'll get that updated on both sides, and you're good to go. I don't think this is unreasonable. Now, honestly, I'm curious as to see what happens when the Secretary of State, if this bill becomes law, and it appears to be headed that way. Once the Secretary of State runs that cross-check with the SAVE database, I'm just curious to know how many are actually non-citizens are entered in the state's voter system. I don't think it's many. That's just my personal opinion. I bet you're going to find in this state, you could count them on one hand. That's my opinion at this point. I don't think that's like just widespread in this state. Now, I'm not talking about other states. I'm talking about in this state. But we'll see. I think this is good policy to have in place. I don't know that we're going to find, wow, that's why our elections have been going this way. It's because we got a bunch of illegals voting. I don't think that will be the outcome of this in Mississippi. I think, though, just as a matter of good practice, this will ensure and protect against any such activity in the future. That's the main purpose of this. I don't think we're going to discover, wow, we got all these people that are illegals and that are entered on the state's voter systems. I think what we're going to find is that's a very, very small number, if any. But again, the bigger thing is this won't ever get out of hand. Ostensibly, it should not get out of hand if we have these policies in place. Crazy that we have to do this, but once again, it goes back to opening up the borders and letting anybody move through. And then these crazy blue states, total insanity, issuing driver's licenses to illegals and then suggesting that should be sufficient to prove that one is a citizen and eligible to vote. And nothing could be further from the truth. A driver's license in a state that allows non-citizens to obtain a driver's license clearly does not reflect and prove that that person is a citizen. It's incredible. But the Democrats are pulling out all the stops in Washington to prevent the federal SAVE Act from passing, which would just simply require the states to do essentially what the state of Mississippi is about to enact into law at the state level. You agree with that, Rhino? There are some nuanced differences, but in general, what we're doing here in Mississippi takes care of it at the state level. Problem is, other states aren't going to take the same action as Mississippi is here with this SHIELD Act. Therefore, the federal government has to step in, sadly, and say, no, you guys are going to have to make sure that people on your voter rolls are legals, American U.S. citizens. And by the way, before you approve someone for voting and add them to the voter rolls, they got to prove that they're a citizen. No big deal. And the Democrats push back. That's just too onerous, too burdensome. Yet we talked a couple of weeks ago when New York was covered in snow that even the communist mayor, Mondami's office, was requiring all kinds of authentication to sign up to go work on the snow shovel crews. Remember that? Like 2 forms of identification to go carry a shovel, but not to vote. That's insanity. That's where we are. When we get Senator Wiggins on later today, we're going to ask him about his vote in opposition of a handful of senators, seven, I believe, voted against the big PBM reform bill. That's been a hot topic in the state of Mississippi for really quite some time. Independent pharmacists have been pushing for some legislation that protects their organizations against what they feel are unfair practices from pharmacy benefit managers. And so it turns out that Senator Wiggins had some issues with the pharmacy benefit manager reform legislation. So we're going to talk to him about why he feels like he could not support this legislation, as well as dig into a number of other key legislation that remains, and there's not much because a lot of it went bye-bye this particular session. I don't think I've ever seen the two sides as polarized as they are now. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Ricky in Aberdeen says, good morning, Gerard. Your son's plane may have had to dodge jackrabbits along with dealing with the winds at Hobby. No doubt. Mike from Madison, Gerard, what do you think is going to happen with the Strait of Hormuz? I got to tell you, I'm sure Rhino did as well. I tried to track all the various activity across over the weekend in the region, and fairly regular updates of stuff happening. The president is calling on other countries to get involved and help get the strait reopened. Still not ready to mobilize our Navy to escort tankers, although I learned this morning that certain countries' tankers are being allowed through, right? Iran's tankers are actually being allowed through, which seems weird to me. But it's not in full operation. That's certainly the case. So the president and Secretary Pete Hegseth, they just maintain that they're working diligently to secure the waterway to allow passage of vessels. But they're not giving any time frame on that. Now, of course, the big news in this excursion, as the president refers to it over the weekend, was the near total destruction of their prize island. How do you pronounce it, Rhino? Horde, something like that? But I can't recall the name.
Karg?
Karg, yeah. That was the big news over the weekend, where the president said that much of their military capability, if not all of it, has been completely obliterated. And also this was intended to make a dent in their oil production capability as well, that being their primary source of revenue. So right now, the flow of oil is not happening in the Strait of Hormuz, although you've seen, though, that the price of oil spiked up to above $100 a barrel again this morning, and then it pulled back. So it's 95 and change right now. It just flashed on the screen. So I think that there's some feeling among traders of oil that there is going to be a resolution. And if you look out at futures like in December, they're in the $60 range, which is where it was pre-war. So the traders, investors in oil futures clearly are optimistic that there will be some closure coming up. But I think folks are waiting to see more definitive information coming from the president and, of course, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. The president did say that Iran wants a ceasefire deal, but the terms aren't good enough. And I think he's appealing to the American people that we got to finish the job. We're in there now. We don't want to pull out yet until we actually finish this job. He didn't say specifically what needed to be in the deal to end the war. He just said Iran would need to completely abandon any nuclear ambitions. So one has to, I think, conclude and assume that they're stopping short of that in the deal they're proposing. Well, heck, the president's made that clear from day one. That's what started the whole dang thing. Because Iran won't stop their nuclear ambitions. And by the way, it's not because they want to power data centers. They want to blow the world up is what they want to do. Starting with Israel and marching right through the Western Europe to us. That's what they want to do. No question about that. So the crazy Iranian regime says it's ready to defend itself for as long as it takes. I mean, they're being defiant and arrogant about it. Quote, it's not a war of survival. That's what Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said. It's not a war of survival. We are, stable and strong enough. We are only defending our people from, this act of aggression. And we don't see any reason why we should talk with Americans because we were talking with them when they decided to attack us. Because we learned you were getting ever so close to full enrichment of up to 11 nuclear bombs. You idiots. You didn't stop after we did everything we could with the aerial attack known as Midnight Hammer, Operation Midnight Hammer. It didn't 100% eliminate the threat. That was learned from intelligence gathering, and the president said, okay, we got to go in and finish the job. That's what's going on here. So the hope is a quick resolution. I know that over the weekend, this attack on that island was devastating. Man, that was incredible. And that's knocked them back, no doubt. But still, we're not at a point where oil can pass through the strait. And that, of course, is causing some pain at the pump. I did have to buy some gas traveling north yesterday. in Oxford, $4 for the middle grade. That's what I pay. $4.09, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So I know folks are feeling the pain. And Energy Secretary Chris Wright over the weekend said that he doesn't expect the price of gas to retreat to its pre-war level until sometime in 2027. So that is not really the news that we wanted to hear. I'm a little surprised because, in general, I feel like he's been maybe over-optimistic, and this was a departure from that attitude and that sentiment, I would say. But that's what he said. So he said gas prices, he said, quote, no guarantees gas prices will fall in weeks. That will figure into the midterm elections. No doubt about it. That will figure in, and it will be some degree of fuel for the fire of Democrats as we approach the midterms. Interesting stuff going on there. So the Democrats as well, they got 2 Dem senators want to eliminate middle-class income taxes. The left's going crazy about this. This just blew me away. The Democratic Party is confused about what it wants. Apparently, that's not lower taxes for the middle class. It's unbelievable. Some of them are complaining about it. Liberals are just going bonkers over it. I don't get it. What it would do is Senator Cory Booker's bill remove from the tax rolls, essentially, exempt those who make $70,000 as a couple, no income taxes. Senator Chris Van Hollen's bill, $92,000. As a couple, you make $92,000 and less, you wouldn't have any income taxes. That would make our tax environment even more progressive. It would place even more of the burden on higher incomes and remove even more people off the tax rolls. We're already at about 45% of the households not paying any income taxes. Man, oh man. We'll see where that goes, but there are tax proposals in states as well, and there was a great report in the Wall Street Journal showing just that. There was an article that showed a tiny chart, if you will, showing the process of time and the commensurate associated tax rate of all 50 states. And when you look at many of the red states, that line is descending from left to right as time goes on, Mississippi being one of them. You guys know that. We're in the process of trimming and ultimately fully eliminating our income tax. And you look at the blue states, and it's going in the other direction. They're busy raising taxes. California, Oregon, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland. It's incredible. New Jersey. They're all in the process of raising taxes. Democrat-controlled states just moving in a different direction. You got Mayor Zoran Mondami of New York. He wants to raise income taxes on high-income households in his fair city. In the meantime, you got wealthy people in these states that are wanting to impose these onerous taxes moving out, such as the Uber founder in California. He says, yep, looks like they're going to go through with this wealth tax. I'm out of here. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
New year, new...
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You're as cold as ice. You're willing to sacrifice our love.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Once again, Middays with Gerard Gibert. We'll be at the Westin in downtown Jackson on Wednesday. I'll be there for the Madison County Business League and Foundation and Pracon Global Investment Group's annual luncheon with keynote speaker Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Looking forward to that event this coming Wednesday. Tonight, there's going to be another school choice debate. My friend Leah Ferretti is going to be debating the Monroe County School District Superintendent. That's going to be at Tupelo. And I'm planning on attending at this point. Going to head up to Tupelo for that. Last week, Lindsey Beckham with Moms for Liberty debated this issue with Nancy Loom from the Parents Campaign. That was up in Oxford. And so we've got interesting pair of debates occurring in the span of a week. Dr. Chad O'Brien, the superintendent of the Monroe School District, who opposes school choice, will be debating the issue with the director of Mississippi Ready's Leah Ferretti, who supports education freedom. That will be in Tupelo tonight. It's sponsored by the Lee County Republican Club. So that should be super interesting. On the C Spire text line, Jerry in Pontotoc, gas is cheaper in Starkville than Oxford. Just thought I'd tell you. Appreciate that, Jerry, for you letting me know. I just mentioned that I paid $4 and change yesterday in Oxford, but it's up everywhere, and it's a matter of timing of when the shipments come in, especially with as wild are the swings on a daily basis of the price of oil futures. That's certainly having an impact on the price of gas at the pump. Again, the president says we're not going to go into a ceasefire situation and sign a deal like Iran wants until they agree to discontinue their nuclear ambitions. And at this point, that doesn't seem to be in the cards. Rhino, you and I many times discuss health care as delivered in this country, as delivered in other countries. And while we know that the Democrats' dream for health care in America is to socialize it, and though I know our friend Thomas in Greenwood already says we have that, it stops, what we have here now stops significantly short of what true socialized medicine is, where, the doctors and the nurses work for the government. The hospitals, the clinics are owned and operated by the government. So it's not just the insurance. It's not just the government reimbursing providers for the delivery of care. As you know, well, you've shared with us before stories of how's that working out for you, right? Delays. There's a recent one in Canada. You may have seen this. You've referenced Canada before. You've referenced the UK numerous times. 2 countries that have fully implemented end-to-end socialized health care. Is the case throughout Western Europe as well. So a woman seeking emergency care for severe abdominal pain, she shared her frustration on social media. This was in Canada, in Nova Scotia. 37 years old, went to see a primary care physician, sent her to the ER with a swollen appendix. She waited 2 hours for triage, went to the waiting room. She was shocked at that point in that it took 15 hours before she could see a doctor or a nurse. And she was finally seen. She said there were probably 150 seats, and they were all full. She's a resident of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. She said, this is what we deal with here on a regular basis. It's not that we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough doctors. And because of that, they're is significant delays. It's just an old demand and supply problem. There's more demand for health care than there are health care providers. This is what the left doesn't get. Why is there a shortage of doctors? Because they have to work for the government and they don't pay them jack squat. Nobody's going to go to school and spend all that money and do their residency and work in a job that's extremely stressful and you're constantly in need for the small amount of money, relatively speaking, right? No doctor in this country, they would tell you, I'm out of here if they do that. Well, that's why you got a shortage, you fools. Oh, but it's free. Fox News, SuperTalk News. After the break, it's Senator Brice Wiggins.
Your home
for Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Hour 2 of the program. It's a Monday. That means Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews will come your way at 12:05 today. But right now, it's Senator Brice Wiggins. He represents District 52 that incorporates Jackson County, serves as the chair of the Senate Judiciary A Committee. Senator, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Happy Monday, Gerard.
Yeah,
good
man.
to be here. Just came off the road up from Jackson County.
A chilly Monday across the Magnolia State.
Man, it was nice this weekend and woke up, but I enjoyed people were out watching the water, and I saw some people out on boats and stuff like that down where I'm at. So, but I wouldn't do that today.
I got you. Okay, so yeah, I agree, especially with that wind kicking up. What are your thoughts so far about the session? Just give me your overall general impression.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that I've told people it actually, believe it or not, feels a little normal, but normalcy being 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. The last 2 years have been a little bit different. And so this year, I've told people to start as things were going. I felt like things were moving in the right direction, and we're seeing that. So, every session, people come in with agendas, people come in with ideas. Every session, bills die. Every session, something comes up that you don't expect. And so from that sense, it's been normal. I will say I think right now there's somewhat of a sense of relief, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. We're getting into the budget time, and last year that broke down, and nobody wanted that again this year. And the year before there were things there, and so I think everybody's. If you want to call it, everybody's been on good behavior as best you can. So, but it has been we're always kind of at the end of our rope at this time of year, and I do think that there's been good working between the House and the Senate members, the chairman. I certainly have had that on in my situation. So, so I think it's been normal from that sense.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. Do you think we're going to get a budget in the regular session?
I do. As we sit here today, now I do think, like I was kind of saying, things are tenuous. At any point, something could drop in and it could fall apart. Part of that is just the monies that we're dealing with. Part of that is what we've dealt with. And look, I think the school choice HB2 was a big issue. Last year, it was the tax bill and the stuff that happened with that. Not that we didn't pass a tax bill, but it was the way it was handled. There could be some lingering stuff. However, everybody, like I said, has been on good position and good behavior. So the idea is that we're working towards getting a budget. I certainly have been working on my budgets. The Senate, we passed the ones that we had to on Friday, and I've been working with my colleagues in the House, or certainly with my chairman, and then having certain discussions with colleagues in the House. So I think we're getting there. It always gets down to the end about how much money there is, what's left. We revived the teacher pay raise, so now we have dueling pay raise bills, and those big ticket items on the budget, they dictate what you're going to do at the end. We also had the PERS issue that's come up, so the question becomes, how much of that money are we obligating this year on those things?
Yeah, I was about to say that. You got that outstanding, that being the teacher pay raise, potentially some sort of investment in PERS, although that may not affect the general fund. It could affect other funds. Well, yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure where it is, but one of the first bills we did was we sent over $500 million of general fund dollars to the House. I thought it was CapEx. Okay, you're right. I apologize for that. It may have been CapEx. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, but that means dipping into the capital expense money and doing all that. So, and then we got to see where the revenues are. February was down. Reasons for that. But from that standpoint, if you go back and play our media, and when I say our, I'm talking about leadership and chairman and all that. We've been saying, the money's. We were living on a high, and we've projected and we've budgeted for things to go down. So in one way, it shouldn't be a surprise. We're starting to see maybe some of that. So we have to be smart. But our rainy day fund is full. We've been smart when in terms of budgeting. Yeah. No, I would generally agree with that. I guess you would call it the cash or the capital expense money. We're not bonding. We're not going to have a bond bill again this year, which I think would make 4 years in a row, which, man, we're getting close to probably we've done basically $250 to $300 million paying off bonds every year. So, that's a good thing. Yeah. No, I agree with that. It's just, as you know, it's kind of hard to crank out a budget when you've got a big ticket item like a teacher pay raise. Oh, when you got Medicaid, which has a $35 million deficit appropriation, which is the first time in probably 6 years, 7, maybe even 8 years that we've had that. So we're having to use that money too. I wouldn't be surprised if Medicaid doesn't come calling for more funding needed. I would not either, based on what we've been asked. And to be fair, we had the budget hearing, and when Drew Snyder was there, and there was a term where I was chairman of Medicaid in the Senate, they were running a surplus and getting that under control. Now, there's been factors and things like that have played into this, so that's where we are. And Medicaid is it's a year-to-year thing as we go. Yeah. Just taking stock, I guess, and recognizing what's happening across the country with respect to health care and some of the reforms in Medicaid, it could impose the additional spending on the part of the state to do its part to match up with the federal. And we've also the Senate sent over money for a money package for the storm. For what happened in the storm. Right. I mean, those are things that we did not plan for coming into the session. Yeah. And so, but those are things that we have to obviously pay attention to and deal with. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, and that's fair enough. So, wanted to ask you about the civics bill. We were talking offline about that. That was a bill that would require, all of our schools public schools across the state of Mississippi to implement a full civics course and require every student to be instructed in it. Right. Yeah. So I appreciate you asking about it. The status is my friends in the
House chose not to move it, but it was obviously referred to the Education Committee, and there's been a lot of, shall we say, back and forth, or maybe no back and forth in education. So it died over there. However, this time of year, you try to find those things, and we believe it's going to be. We're going to work to get that put back into place. And I think I would ask people to continue to press for that. Gerard, it's really been unbelievable how much support I've had for that bill across the spectrum. And I was driving up here this morning, and somebody was telling me, somebody I work with, actually my paralegal, and she had raised an issue on a bill, and people were going, this was on something else, people were going crazy, and the point was that it would only pass the House. It didn't even come to the Senate. And everybody was online, not everybody, but I'm exaggerating a little bit, but online people were saying, oh, that bill's going to pass. It's not. It had to come to the Senate. The Senate's not even acting on it. Actually, that's the NIL bill. Oh, okay. So the Senate, the House passed it. The Senate's not even taking it up.
So the NIL bill's got the civics?
No. And I'm sorry. I was using that as an example of...
I see. They confused the bills.
That's right. Yeah, okay. And I'm sorry. They're using that as an example of why we need civics, because there's a House and a Senate. The House passes it. That doesn't mean it's passed. We got the Senate. The Senate has to act on it, and then you have the governor that has to sign it.
That's right. I got you.
I'm being a little bit...
I'm with you. Yep. No, that was good. So you, the principal author of this legislation,
yes, principal author, and there's a couple other co-sponsors. But you've seen people asking for it, like when I say rank and file, you're asking for, citizens ask for it, teachers have talked to me. Educators have messaged me saying we need this bill because, and ultimately what I think where things have gone is maybe when you and I were in school, that was taught.
It was required.
Yeah. And it's not. It is not now. And the point is to get educated citizens as they graduate. We'll keep talking.
We got Senator Brice Wiggins in the Element Wealth studio. Coming right back.
Hello, I'm Sean.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio, visiting with Senator Brice Wiggins. So I think it's fair to say, Senator, that this is something most Mississippians want. They want to see mandated civics instruction in our high schools, I guess it would be.
Yes,
high school level.
8th to 12th, to offer 8th to 12th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, or I'm sorry, 9th to 12th grade.
Yeah. So,
and let me clear up something, because I've had people say, because I've had people message me and they say, oh, well, we teach it in 8th grade. No, this is different. And what we teach, as I understand it, in 8th grade is simply what I call the basics. It's like the governor is this and the state flag is this and that. And they do it, and because of all the other requirements, they move on. We're going to talk about the inner workings of the government, the branches, the checks and balances, separation of powers, and things like that, so that people understand the workings of how the branches of government work. Look, just basic, and I've said this before, the executive branch does not make the laws, and people think that at times the governor makes the laws. They don't. I'm reading a book right now that's actually gotten a lot of awards. It's called The Amendment. It's called, I forget the name of it, but it's all about the purpose of the amendment, the U.S. Constitution, and the amendment process that is provided for in the U.S. Constitution. And it's very interesting because it's getting into the history about John Adams and the Constitutional Convention and the whole point of amendments and things like that, but it's also talking about the reason that provision exists in our U.S. Constitution is because of there's certain roles of the judiciary, there's certain roles of the executive, and the legislative is the quote is the body of the people.
Right.
And I do not think that our young people coming out understand the inner workings of all that. And, and we need informed citizens who because it's us people that are voting. And look, we just had a primary for our federal elections. You may know what the turnout was. The words I got was like 12 to 15%, if that. 16%. I mean, it's in one way it's a little bit frustrating, but if you know the workings and you understand, you're going to go exercise your right to vote, and we've got to do that. And I've had people from all across the state encouraging the passage of the bill.
Yeah, I think that's right. So you're going to try to figure out a way to revive this legislation through what remaining tools there are.
Right.
And vehicles there are for this.
That's exactly right.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's talk about pharmacy benefit manager. Wow.
Oh, yes.
What a controversial matter this has been.
Was this the third year?
For a while. I was going to say for a while. We talked about it earlier. So this is legislation that ignited the fireworks in the Senate, I think is one way to put it. And you came down in opposition of this legislation, correct?
I came down in opposition to
the bill.
I did, because ultimately it had the amendment from what we're calling the Senate amendment. And I know it's shocking. Actually, I'm actually supporting the House bill. So who says there's no bicameralism going on? But my colleague, Senator England, and I, yes, we were against the Senate amendment that got put into the House bill. And so that people are clear, the House bill was supported, is supported, the actual House bill as it came over from the House, supported by all your business interests throughout the state. It actually does PBM reform. We've been, as I said on the floor, we've been dealing with this for 3 years at least. I was a conferee last year. Congress has actually implemented some PBM reform. The House bill did everything that I guess we've been asking to do, which is do reform to the PBM process, be cognizant and friendly to our business community. When I say business, I'm talking about these are businesses and job creators. I said Ingalls, Chevron, Toyota, the Poultry Association, our cooperatives, our electric cooperatives, bankers, all these folks and these industries and companies have interests throughout the state of Mississippi. They all did not want the Senate amendment that was going in. And by the way,
tell us about that amendment.
Yeah, so the short version is this, as people can understand. When the House bill came over, it was doing that. And there were two basically big things, which is one is it put the regulation under the Department of Insurance and not the Pharmacy Board, which has been there. As someone who's dealt with ethics and accountability, that makes sense to me. You're not the chicken's not guarding the hen house, or whatever that saying is. The fox didn't guard the hen house.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that was under the Department of Insurance, and then it's also about what I call price subsidies. Okay, it put in there like we're going to guarantee a price for the pharmacist, and so in committee the amendment passed, which took that out from under the insurance and put it back under the Pharmacy Board. That's people judging the people you're regulating.
It's a bit of a conflict.
It's a conflict. Okay, so that was it. And then put these price subsidies into it. It also had a reverse repealer. Well, then what happened on the floor, which is a procedural motion that would have forced it to conference. Then what happened on the floor was Senator Parks, she's done a good job for advocating for that side of it. She took the reverse repealer out, which means if the House concurs, it goes straight to the governor. That was not what the deal was when we brought it out of committee. Okay, it had the reverse repealer in it, and knowing it would have gone to committee, maybe I would have voted for it at that point. I don't know, but what it had was the reverse repealer came out, which meant that we had the Senate bill or the Senate amendment in there, and I can go down the list and tell you how many businesses are against what the Senate position did. And I'm not normally in that position, but the reason I'm there is because the House bill came to us. It's been worked on for 3 years, and it takes the position of we're going to reform PBMs, but we're also going to be cognizant of the interests of the business community. The business community has supported it. They support the House bill. The easy thing was for us to pass it and it goes straight to the governor. We made that argument, Senator England and I. We said pass the House bill, send it to the governor. We've got PBM reform, and we can put this behind us. And we've helped our pharmacists. That's the most important thing. We've helped our pharmacists. We've checked all the boxes. We've done good policy, and it could be signed into law. But no, instead, what we had to do was take up a Senate amendment that actually put price subsidies for pharmacists.
It's my understanding they're calling filling fees. They were willing to at least this is the point that was made, that those who supported the amendment, that the pharmacists would prefer these increased filling fees versus this prohibition of steering. Is that correct?
Well, the steering's not in either one of them, so the steering wasn't in either one. Gerard, I want to look. My great-grandfather, up on my wall in my law office, there's a picture of Wiggins Drugstore. Okay. My great-grandfather was a pharmacist back in the 50s, okay? He built his business. He did all that, okay? I understand what this means. And what that amendment was doing is saying, I'm going to guarantee you money. We're setting the price for the market. We are involving ourselves in the market. The other thing that the bill generally has done is it's involved the government into the contracts that the businesses in this state have done to benefit their employees. And I've done this 3 times. I did this on the floor of the Senate. I did it in committee. I did it last year. I asked Senator Parks, I said, can you guarantee me that the cost of drugs, if this passes, will go down? At no point has the answer been yes. Because it won't. And if we are concerned about, which we are, the cost of drugs going up and things like that, we would be focusing on that. Instead, this is some call it a money grab. I want money, extra fees to build up the price that I get paid. Now, what I've heard is, well, you know, the small businesses are going out and pharmacists are losing, they can't compete. Well, competition is part of capitalism. I have not asked the government to intercede in the prices that I charge my clients in my law practice. Ingalls, Chevron, Ergon, they have contracts. They are looking out for thousands and thousands of employees, that their employees are actually getting a benefit from the standpoint of lower costs because they've been able to negotiate that. I've heard of the same thing, Senator, that many businesses say, the PBMs actually do help them, but they're harmful according to the independent pharmacists. And that's why the House bill actually did those things, and you combine it with the congressional. It balanced it. That's right. Makes sense. Appreciate you coming on, as always, Senator Brice Wiggins. Thank you. From Jackson County. Thank you, sir. Coming right back.
Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We appreciate Senator Brice Wiggins for joining us here in the Element Wealth studio. I did ask him offline about the liquor bill. That's legislation Representative Hank Zuber introduced that would, a couple of weeks ago, that would address the problem we have with the ABC warehouse not being able to fulfill its responsibility of distributing alcohol to the state's alcohol retailers, both the packaged liquor stores, restaurants, lounges that are approved for the sale of alcohol. They get those wine and spirits from the alcohol beverage distribution facility. Losing a train of thought there. So that's just owned and operated essentially by the state of Mississippi. So this bill would temporarily allow licensed liquor stores, etc., to purchase alcohol directly from the manufacturers or other suppliers for the next 2 years. That's what Representative Zuber's bill would do. And I did ask the senator about the prospect of that bill in the Senate. He said likely going to conference. That makes sense. So we'll see. Now, a couple of things I'll point out about that just to keep in mind is, first, are we sure that these big manufacturers and other suppliers of alcohol are on board with dealing with, rather than one entity, that being the ABC warehouse in the state of Mississippi and its distribution function, hundreds of liquor stores and restaurants and lounges across the state? There's a cost associated with that, and it's a big one. So I don't know. And then from the retailer's perspective, now instead of dealing with one vendor, they're dealing with potentially dozens, if not hundreds. That's complicated. That's expensive. Then there's the tax aspect of that, which is easy for ABC to levy and collect. Again, one entity, one outlet, one seller collecting that at the distribution point as part of that function. Now we're talking about all these out-of-state manufacturers and suppliers. Are they going to establish tax nexus with the state of Mississippi? Are they interested in that? Is there enough business in the state of Mississippi for them to do that? You see what I'm saying there. There are business aspects of this. It's not as cut and dry as, okay, well, you can't buy from that one entity. Now you can buy for these 100 over here. Yeah, that's not as easy as it appears, and you probably won't find everybody's gung-ho about that. It's just something to think about. But I do respect and applaud Representative Zuber for trying to do something to remedy this problem, because it appears it's going to be with us a while, and that's causing problems. And I have noticed, I'm not a drinker, but I've noticed the shelves seem to be a bit sparse, do they not? When you go into the stores and the restaurants, etc., lounges, they'll tell you that, yeah, they're having problems getting the various alcohol products. So, no doubt, it does seem like it's an interesting year, isn't it, Rhino? We got the alcohol problem. We got the school choice issue. We got the civics bill. And we got the teacher pay raise. All the things which are kind of at different statuses, I guess is what you would say. We got the governor hinting he may call a special session for the issue of school choice. You got competing approaches to a big old teacher pay raise, and I haven't seen what's called a fiscal note associated with both of those proposals. And I really believe that anytime we're talking about this amount of money, we should have thorough financial analysis from the Department of Finance and Administration, the Legislative Budget Office, all those that might be involved in estimating the impact of major changes in our budget. In this case, a big spending amount. In this case, with the teachers, we're looking at $350, $400 million a year. That's significant. That's material. You got a big hit to the budget there that at least needs to be considered as we think about the future. Where are our revenues going? What's the trajectory of our spending? And that's what these fiscal notes, as they call them, do. They estimate that, project it out, and show the impact. I feel like that legislators ought to be informed of that before they cast a ballot. I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, I really want to see the teachers get a pay raise. I don't oppose that whatsoever. But just like you run your household or your business, anytime you're looking at spending more money, you think about, okay, how am I going to pay for that? That's pretty reasonable, pretty straightforward. And that's what this exercise would do. Okay, guys, this is what's going to cost you. This is where it looks like our revenue's going. So just so you guys will know, this is what you're dealing with. In the meantime, you got Medicaid knocking on the door, having a deficit year last year. You know next year they're going to be looking for more, and the out years. We talked, I can't remember who it was, maybe it was Senator Sparks not so long ago, Rhino, about the One Big Beautiful Bill Act's reforms to the SNAP program and how there's a provision within the OBBBA that requires states to pick up a certain percentage of the benefits, not just cover some of the cost of administration, which, by the way, goes from 25% of that cost to 50% is now the responsibility of the states. But there's also a provision that requires the states to cover a certain percentage of the benefits based on their error rate. That's kind of a sliding scale. The higher is the rate, the more the percentage the state would have to kick in to cover benefits. That's estimated based on our current error rate to cost about $150 million. Now, I think most people out there that would consider themselves conservative think, I want to see that spending number go down. Doesn't appear to be in the cards at this point when you consider all of these elements that figure into the budget. And then we've got, at the same time, the income tax being phased out, so that likely will produce less revenue into the Treasury. So really a complicated situation. By the way, the president is conducting a live, looks like a press briefing, Rhino, at the White House. He is seated. Looks like he is also got members of his cabinet on hand. He says that Trump says about Iran, it's a paper tiger we're dealing with now. That was his exact statement. I think that's in reference to his prior statements that their military capability has been functionally eliminated. He also said they knew the Strait would be a weapon. He knew that it would likely close down if we took action, as he did, but that was a risk he was willing to take. That it was short-term pain, if you will, I'm paraphrasing, for the long-term gain. If we can eliminate their nuclear ambitions and stabilize the region, we will not only return to a normal flow of oil through the Strait, but it would be permanent, and we wouldn't be constantly under this prospect of what the hell are they going to do now, right? We're always worried about that, 24 hours a day, because they're crazy people. There ain't no way else to put it. They're just crazy people. Man, oh man. So hopefully we're going to get some movement there and going to have a breakthrough. Right now, the president not really getting a patriotic bounce in the polls following these strikes on Iran, but I do think that if he can get a quick remedy and a resolution and put this behind us and stabilize the region and the world and start to see the price of oil retreat, I think everything's going to be great. I also think that would cause the markets just to absolutely roar. Today, by the way, they're up. They're in the green. I think there's some degree of optimism felt on Wall Street right now about this whole situation, especially after the president essentially eliminated the military capability and some of the oil-producing capability on their prized treasure, their island. What's it called? Starts with a K? Kark, yes. I mean, that was a big deal. I don't think anybody saw that coming. I certainly didn't have that on my list. But let's pray that we get this thing resolved and get back to normal and focus on our real problems without having to worry about these menaces to the world over there in Iran. I am out of here today. I've got an appointment I've got to get to. We'll have a repeat coming up in the next segment. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless.
Polyup, Mississippi. You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Once again, Middays with Gerard Gibert will be at the Westin in downtown Jackson on Wednesday. I'll be there for the Madison County Business League and Foundation and Pracon Global Investment Group's annual luncheon with keynote speaker Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Looking forward to that event this coming Wednesday. Tonight, there's going to be another school choice debate. My friend Leah Ferretti is going to be debating the Monroe County School District Superintendent. That's going to be at Tupelo. And I'm planning on attending at this point. Going to head up to Tupelo for that. Last week, Lindsey Beckham with Moms for Liberty debated this issue with Nancy Loom from the Parents Campaign. That was up in Oxford. And so we've got interesting pair of debates occurring in the span of a week. Dr. Chad O'Brien, the superintendent of the Monroe School District, who opposes school choice, will be debating the issue with the director of Mississippi Ready's Leah Ferretti, who supports education freedom. That will be in Tupelo tonight. It's sponsored by the Lee County Republican Club. So that should be super interesting. On the C Spire text line, Jerry in Pontotoc, gas is cheaper in Starkville than Oxford. Just thought I'd tell you. Appreciate that, Jerry, for you letting me know. I just mentioned that I paid $4 and change yesterday in Oxford, but it's up everywhere, and it's a matter of timing of when the shipments come in, especially with as wild are the swings on a daily basis of the price of oil futures. That's certainly having an impact on the price of gas at the pump. Again, the president says we're not going to go into a ceasefire situation and sign a deal like Iran wants until they agree to discontinue their nuclear ambitions. And at this point, that doesn't seem to be in the cards. Rhino, you and I many times discuss health care as delivered in this country, as delivered in other countries. And while we know that the Democrats' dream for health care in America is to socialize it, and though I know our friend Thomas in Greenwood already says we have that, it stops, what we have here now stops significantly short of what true socialized medicine is, where, yeah, the doctors and the nurses work for the government. The hospitals, the clinics are owned and operated by the government. So it's not just the insurance. It's not just the government reimbursing providers for the delivery of care, as you know. Well, you've shared with us before stories of how's that working out for you, right? Delays. There's a recent one in Canada. You may have seen this. You've referenced Canada before. You've referenced the UK numerous times. 2 countries that have fully implemented end-to-end socialized health care. Is the case throughout Western Europe as well. So a woman seeking emergency care for severe abdominal pain, she shared her frustration on social media. This is in Canada, in Nova Scotia. 37 years old, went to see a primary care physician, sent her to the ER with a swollen appendix. She waited 2 hours for triage, went to the waiting room. She was shocked at that point in that it took 15 hours before she could see a doctor or a nurse. And she was finally seen. She said there were probably 150 seats, and they were all full. She's a resident of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. She said, yeah, this is what we deal with here on a regular basis. It's not that we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough doctors. And because of that, there is significant delays. It's just an old demand and supply problem. There's more demand for health care than there are health care providers. This is what the left doesn't get. Why is there a shortage of doctors? Because they have to work for the government and they don't pay them jack squat. Nobody's going to go to school and spend all that money and do their residency and work in a job that's extremely stressful and you're constantly in need for the small amount of money, relatively speaking, right? No doctor in this country, they would tell you, I'm out of here if they do that. Well, that's why you got a shortage, you fools. Oh, but it's free. Fox News, SuperTalk News, after the break. It's Senator Brice Wiggins.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.